Have you ever struggled with a needle like Eustace did? Not just a little pinch, oh no. We mean the kind of struggle where your body turns into a pretzel, your eyes roll back and your soul momentarily leaves your body. All because of a tiny, shiny, sharp little stick. Well, tonight, out in the middle of nowhere, under a sleepy sky and beside a snoring windmill, Eustace Bagg is about to face his greatest fear. And poor Courage, he's the only one who can save him from the prick of panic. The morning in nowhere is unusually calm. The wind is yawning, and even the crows seem too tired to squawk. Muriel finds a piece of paper fluttering on the porch. It reads, "Appointment reminder, Dr. Pickle's traveling clinic, Eustace Bagg, 4 p.m. today." Eustace grumbles, never made no appointment, must be a mistake. But every time he throws it away, it floats back. In his cereal, inside his hat, even tucked in his boot, Courage watches nervously as the farmhouse starts ticking. Literally ticking like a clock. Time is counting down, and the sun starts to blink. At 4 p.m. exactly, a squeaky wagon rolls into the yard. It's shaped like a giant pickle. A hatch opens. Out steps Dr. Pickle, a tall, rubbery-looking man with a dentist smile and a nurse made entirely of band-aids. Muriel insists, "It's just a checkup, Eustace. You'll be fine." But Eustace takes one look at the sparkling silver needle and screams. He runs. Out the window. Through the barn. Into the washing machine. Courage follows, watching as Eustace stretches, flips, and folds into shapes no human should survive. The needle floats behind. Slowly. Like it knows it'll win. The entire house turns into a surreal maze. Eustace hides in the couch. The couch swallows him. He hides in the pantry. The soup cans whisper, "You can't run from the prick." Courage uses every gadget he can. Bubble shields. Invisible ink. Even Muriel's knitted armor suit. To defend Eustace. But the needle keeps finding them. Always close, always calm. Even the clock's hands turn into tiny syringes, ticking closer. Courage falls asleep from exhaustion. And enters a dream world. In this dream, he's in a massive doctor's office the size of a football field. Needles fall like rain. The chairs have teeth. The magazines scream. And Dr. Pickle is 20 feet tall, chasing Courage with a glowing green injection. Just when it looks like he'll be caught, Muriel's voice echoes, "Be brave, dear." And everything freezes. Courage wakes up, gasping. But something's changed. He's not scared anymore. Just tired. Calm. Dr. Pickle finally corners Eustace, now hiding under a trash can. Eustace begs, whimpers. Courage stands in front of him. He looks up at the giant needle, takes a deep breath, and offers his paw. The doctor gently presses the tip into Courage's arm. Bloop. Nothing. No scream. No fire. No world-ending chaos. Eustace, embarrassed, gets his shot next. He still screams, but only out of pride. That night, the house is peaceful. Eustace snores with a cartoon bandage on his arm. Courage sits on the porch, gazing at the stars, which look oddly like glowing needles now, but not scary anymore. Just floating, twinkling lights. Muriel rocks in her chair. "Brave little dog," she whispers, patting Courage's head. The wind hums a sleepy lullaby, and Courage finally curls up in peace, dreaming of a world where even the scariest things aren't so bad after all. It begins on a slow, yawning afternoon in nowhere. The wind is tired, the chickens are dozing, and Muriel hums a lullaby while dusting the old dresser. She opens a drawer and gasps softly. "Why, I haven't seen these in years." She holds up a pair of giant toenail clippers, gleaming and rusted at the hinges. They click once, and the echo seems to rattle the windows. Muriel turns to Courage, who's lounging near the fireplace. "Come now, dear, let's tidy up those little claws of yours." Courage gulps. A single drop of sweat rolls down his face. Muriel sits Courage on a pillow and lifts the first paw. The clippers rise, and click. The sound is sharp, metallic, like a guillotine in slow motion. Courage's pupils shrink to pinpricks, zoom into his eye, and we enter his hallucination. He imagines the clippers as a giant steel monster, gnashing its jaws, chasing him across a field of paws and claws. He hops on one leg, the other completely bandaged in cartoonish horror, screaming in silent agony as opera music plays. Back in reality, Muriel chuckles. "Oh, don't be such a goose." Courage faints. That night, Courage wakes to hear click, click, click. He peeks out the bedroom door. The clippers are standing on two tiny legs, walking. They scuttle like a crab, clicking as they go. Courage follows them into the hallway. They vanish into the shadows. A cold wind flows through the house, and every sound echoes with a metallic snip. In a dreamlike state, the house stretches and melts, the floors become curved, and Courage slides down into the laundry room, where piles of socks whisper, snip, snip, snip. Courage finds himself in a strange dream realm, a forest of giant toenails, trees shaped like feet. The sky is green and smells faintly of foot powder. The toenail clippers now fly above like a vulture, screeching clip clip. He runs. He hides behind a mushroom shaped like a toe. He meets a wise old slipper, who whispers, "You mustn't run, Courage, only the brave can be still." As the clippers swoop down, Courage stands his ground. Suddenly, silence. Courage finds himself back in the living room. Muriel is there, smiling gently. She lifts the clipper again, but this time it's smaller, quieter. Its edges are soft. She snips one nail. Courage doesn't feel a thing. The dream shifts into slow motion, sparkles floating around. He realizes it was never the pain, it was the idea of it that scared him. He reaches out his paw, and allows Muriel to clip. Each snip releases a tiny lullaby note. Back in the real world, Courage awakens on Muriel's lap. One paw is freshly trimmed. The clippers sit still and harmless on the table. Muriel pets him gently. They're now all better. Eustace walks in and slips on a nail clipping. Stupid dog. Courage giggles quietly, drifting back into a nap. Outside, the wind hums a tune, soft and warm, and the toenail clippers. It's a dusty, sleepy afternoon in nowhere. Wind hums through the cracked windows. The chickens cluck in slow motion. Muriel hums softly, as she dusts the bathtub. Time for a proper wash. Courage, lying comfortably in a patch of sun, opens one eye. His tail tucks instantly. He remembers. Last time, the soap slipped into the toaster. The bubbles foamed for days. I don't need a bath. He tries to pantomime, waving his arms, pointing at his nearly clean fur. But Muriel only smiles, holding up a brand new bar of soap, pink, shiny, and suspiciously grinning. The music shifts to gentle classical piano. Courage gulps. The tub is filled, and the soap is waiting. Courage is lowered into the tub like a prisoner being offered to the soap god. Muriel gently scrubs his back while humming a lullaby. All is peaceful, until, twip, the bar of soap pops from her hands like a greased eel. It bounces once, thulk, against the wall, then again, bop, off the shower curtain rod. Then, zing, right past Courage's head. Courage's ears flap in slow motion as the soap flies across the room like a tiny squeaky missile. Eyes wide. Time slows. A single piano note echoes as he leaps from the tub, water trailing behind him like glitter. The soap lands, gently, on the bathroom floor. It wobbles, waits, and then, it launches itself under the sink. Courage stares, and the chase begins. The soap skitters under the sink. Courage crawls after it, nose to the tile. Just as his paw brushes it, pop, it shoots out and ricochets off the towel rack. It glides through the air like a ballerina, twirling mid-spin, sparkling with water droplets, as if lit by stage lights. Whomp, it slaps the mirror. Ding, bounces off the ceiling light. Dink, rebounds off Muriel's knitting basket. How did that even get in here? Courage leaps with the elegance of a soggy flamingo, arms outstretched, spinning, slipping. He crashes into a shower curtain and gets wrapped up like a mummy. From inside the cocoon, we hear him mutter, "Muriel, help." But Muriel is humming outside the door, folding towels. Just holler when you're all rinsed, dear. The soap rests, for now, on the edge of the toilet. Courage peeks one eye out from the tangled shower curtain. He spots the soap, perched delicately on the rim of the toilet like a smug gymnast. It gleams in the bathroom light. Courage creeps forward, step by slippery step, paws squeaking against the tile. He reaches out, the soap twitches. He freezes. Then, slip, the soap flips backward into the bowl with a splash. Courage gasps. He dives forward, too late. His paw slams the flush lever. The bowl whirls with a roar like a sleepy whirlpool dragon. The soap spins round and round, mocking him with every bubbly orbit. Courage braces himself. The water explodes upward in a geyser of foam. Courage is launched skyward like a pink-furred rocket, twisting in slow motion. He lands in the laundry basket, face first. The soap, miraculously, lands back on the floor. Smiling, he opens his eyes to find himself in a world made entirely of porcelain and bubbles. Bathtubs float through the air like balloons. Shampoo bottles walk on two legs. Rubber ducks chirp lullabies in unison. Courage looks down. He's wearing a towel like a royal robe. A crown made of loofahs sits on his head. Suddenly a giant soap bar, 20 feet tall and glimmering with suds, appears from the mist. It speaks in a deep, silky voice. You must be cleansed, Courage. The ground beneath him turns into a spinning bathtub carousel. Water fountains rise and spray him gently as the opera music from earlier returns, now softer, dreamier. Courage floats in mid-air, spinning slowly, arms outstretched, bubbles forming wings on his back. He's calm, clean, peaceful. But just before he drifts fully into the dream, he sees it, the real soap bar, watching him. In the dream, it grins wider than ever. Courage slowly awakens in the laundry basket. The bathroom is quiet. Sunlight filters through the steamy window like honey. The soap lies still in the middle of the tile floor. No more bouncing, no more launching, just waiting. Courage rises. No more panic, no more flailing. He walks forward calmly, like a warrior returning from battle, damp, but wiser. He lifts the soap, carefully, respectfully. It doesn't fight, it doesn't flee. He places it gently back on the edge of the tub. Muriel enters, humming softly. Oh, there you are, dear. All finished. She pats Courage dry with a towel and wraps him up like a sleepy little burrito. Eustace peeks in, slips on a puddle, and crashes into the sink. Stupid dog. Courage doesn't react. He's already curled up in the towel, clean, warm, safe. The soap sits silently. Outside, the wind hums a bubbly tune, and somewhere, in the distance, a rubber duck sings a final quack of approval. Out in the middle of nowhere, beneath a drowsy sky and a sun that blinked too slowly, the Bag farmhouse sat unusually quiet. Inside, a groan echoed through the living room. Not a ghost, not a creature, not a monster from beyond, but something far more stubborn. Eustace Bag, slumped deep in his armchair, clutched the side of his jaw, and moaned like a rusty gate. Muriel, he mumbled, mouth half closed. My tooth. It's doing the cha-cha in my skull. Muriel looked up from her knitting, gentle as ever, rocking softly in her favorite chair. Oh, Eustace, she sighed sweetly. You probably just need a dentist. Eustace sat up sharply, eyes wide. No dentists. He clenched the armrests with surprising strength. His teeth rattled. Or maybe just one tooth. A molar, sharp, swollen, angry, behind a doorframe. Courage peeked around the corner. His ears twitched. His paws trembled. He didn't like that word. Dentist. He didn't like it at all. And that's when the knock came. Not a soft knock, not a friendly knock, but a dull, heavy knock, like someone tapping the door with an iron mallet wrapped in velvet. Call, knock, knock. Muriel stood and opened the door. There, framed by the sleepy gray sky, stood a man, or something like a man, tall, thin, wearing a long white coat that fluttered in a wind no one could feel. He smiled too wide. His briefcase hissed faintly, as if something inside it was breathing. On his coat, a crooked, shiny name tag. Dr. Smiley, Mobile Dentistry and Odd Jobs. Evenin', he said in a syrupy tone. I heard someone's got a naughty little molar. Courage shivered. The drill hadn't even appeared yet, but deep in his bones, he already heard it. Isherer, faint, far away, but real. Muriel stepped aside kindly. Oh, how lucky. Come right in, doctor. Courage watched helplessly, as Dr. Smiley entered. He set down his hissing case, unclipped it, and smiled wider. There's nothing to fear, he whispered, unrolling a long velvet mat across the coffee table. Metal tools clinked softly, forceps, hooks, glinting mirrors, and at the center, a drill, silver, sleek, sleeping, for now, but Courage could already feel it. When that drill woke up, the nightmare would begin, and so he backed away, his breath shallow, tail tucked, as the shadows stretched just a little too far across the floor, and the house seemed to sigh. The air inside the farmhouse grew heavy, as if it had swallowed a storm and forgot how to exhale. Dr. Smiley's long fingers opened the briefcase wider, but instead of tools and gauze, what unfolded was a door, not a normal door, not one with hinges or a handle. It rose from the case like steam, glowing pale green, buzzing faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Courage's ears flattened. Muriel didn't seem to notice. Oh, what a fancy setup you have, she said, smiling cheerfully. Eustace grunted, still clutching his jaw. Just fix it and be quick about it. Dr. Smiley turned his head toward Courage, but his neck kept turning, too far, almost upside down. Then he smiled. Everyone waits somewhere, and with a snap of his gloved fingers, the door opened. A fog pulled Courage in. He didn't walk, he didn't resist, he just floated. The light changed. No longer the farmhouse. Not quite a dream. Not quite real. He was in a waiting room. But everything was wrong. The carpet pulsed like jelly. The chairs whispered among themselves. The magazines on the table flipped their own pages and sighed with boredom. There were no windows. Just ticking, and ticking, and ticking. Courage sat in a soft chair that exhaled when he touched it. It cradled him too gently, like it didn't want him to ever leave. Above him, a painting showed a smiling tooth being brushed by clouds. The music was slow and sleepy, but also unsettling, like a lullaby for machines. A light blinked above the far door. "Patient #1," a voice whispered. There were no other patients, just courage. He gulped, stood, walked through the door, and inside was Dr. Smiley, floating, not walking. His lab coat now longer, brushing the floor like smoke. His eyes glowing faintly beneath magnifying lenses, and in his hand, a drill. But it wasn't just a tool now, it had wings. Tiny, twitching, metallic wings, like a dragonfly made of silver. It hovered beside his head, purring. "Say Dr. Smiley whispered. Courage opened his mouth. Involuntarily, something pulled it open from the inside. The room tilted. The ceiling spiraled. He looked down and saw himself, tiny, sitting in a tooth. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. Dr. Smiley raised the drill. "This won't hurt," he whispered, and the drill flew toward him. Just before it touched, flash, Courage woke up, gasping. He was back in the farmhouse. Muriel rocked gently in her chair. Eustace snored on the couch. Dr. Smiley was gone. No tools, no briefcase, no fog, just quiet, until Eustace yawned, and inside his open mouth, Courage saw it, a tiny silver drill, spinning, waiting, breathing. That night, the wind outside whispered through the walls like an old lullaby, the kind that used to soothe children, or warn them. Inside the farmhouse, the shadows stretched longer than usual. The clock ticked softer. Muriel dozed peacefully in her rocking chair, her knitting needles slow and drowsy in her lap. Eustace lay still on the couch, his mouth slightly open, his chest rising and falling in rhythm with the hum of the heater. And Courage, he sat frozen at the foot of the stairs, staring at Eustace's mouth, at the glimmer of metal inside. The tiny drill, it was real. He knew it. Every time Eustace exhaled, the drill spun faster. Courage crept closer, paws silent on the floorboards. The drill flickered, just once, like it blinked, and then, it flew out. Courage ducked as the tiny drill zipped into the air, wings buzzing like a mechanical hummingbird. It glowed under the ceiling light. It spun in circles, and then it spoke. Not in words, but in a whispery buzz. Courage felt in his bones. "Time for your cleaning." Courage yelped and bolted down the hall, tail tucked, ears back, paws skidding. The drill gave chase, zipping, diving, weaving between light bulbs and picture frames. It zipped into the bathroom, bouncing off the mirror. It carved little circles into the tiles. Courage leapt into the laundry basket. The drill followed. It wasn't just chasing him. It was hungry, hungry for enamel. Suddenly, the walls of the house faded. The hallway stretched into infinity. Doors blinked in and out of existence. The floor turned into floss, soft, stringy and unsteady. Courage floated again. He passed through a room where toothbrushes danced in a circle. Toothpaste tubes sang a haunting melody. Brush and rinse, brush and spin. Let the cleaning now begin. The drill flew ahead, now, waiting at the end of the hall. It grew bigger, and bigger. Its wings became blades of light. Its whir, a storm. Courage opened his mouth to scream, but bubbles came out instead, and just before the drill reached him, pop, he landed on the living room floor. Back to normal. The house looked fine again. Muriel still rocked, humming softly. Eustace snored. The drill, gone. Or maybe just hiding. Courage looked around slowly, then down. He lifted his paw. Underneath it, a feather, silver, buzzing faintly. Courage slept uneasily that night. The house creaked gently in the dark, a kind of creak that didn't match the wind. The shadows in the hallway didn't move, but they leaned. And in his dreams, he was falling. Down, 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 through a tunnel lined with gums and enamel, spiraling through jaws too big to belong to anything alive. He landed, softly, in a field of white snow. No, teeth, thousands of them, some small like pebbles, some giant, tall as mountains, molars with flat, wide peaks, canines like icebergs. The wind blew cold and sharp, carrying with it the faint echo of time to floss. Courage wrapped his arms around himself, shivering. The sky overhead blinked like a sleepy eye. He took a step forward. The ground beneath him clicked. Another step. A squeaky squeal. The teeth were alive. He stepped onto a giant molar. It sighed. Ahead, the towering molar mountains loomed. A row of jagged peaks gleaming under a pale, minty moon. A sign stood at the base, written in crayon-like script. Cavity Caverns. This way. Courage gulped. He didn't want to go in, but he also didn't want to stay behind. Behind him, he heard it. The wings, the whisper. Open wide. He ran. Through the narrow canyon between incisors, the size of trees. Past floss, ropes hanging like vines. Over puddles of mouthwash that shimmered with dreamlight. And then, he saw them. The plaque people. Tiny, dusty figures made of gunk and old crumbs. They hissed at him, trying to stick to his fur, muttering sleepy nonsense. Don't brush. Never brush. Let it build. Courage swatted them away, panting, ducking behind a crumbling molar. From above, the drill circled like a bird of prey. It spotted him. It dived. But just as it neared, Courage fell backward into a pit. A soft, cushiony landing. He blinked. He was inside a giant mouth-shaped cave. Stalactites of licorice. Pools of bubbling fluoride. And across the chamber, a mirror. He walked to it slowly. His reflection wasn't him. It was a version of Courage, smiling too wide, eyes open too far. And as the reflection leaned closer, it whispered, "You missed a spot." Courage ran through the molar mountains, his paws slipping across smooth enamel paths, his breath fogging in the peppermint air. He didn't know how long he'd been running. Time didn't work right here. It stretched. It paused. Sometimes, it repeated itself. Behind him, the drill's fluttering wings beat rhythmically, a soft predatory whir echoing across the peaks. And then, he tripped, fell forward, through a hole that hadn't been there before. He landed hard, but not on stone, not on teeth. He landed on something soft and loud. A scream, not a noise, a living, breathing scream. It wriggled beneath him and floated up into the air, a ghostly white puff with an open mouth and no body. It screamed silently, looping like a lullaby, with no end. Courage stood slowly. He was in a hallway, dark, endless, lined with doors. No, not doors, mouths, hundreds of them, each one open, each one frozen in a moment of terror. The hall of 1,000 screams. Each mouth held a sound Courage had once made, or tried to. Each scream was his, from every monster, every terror, every time he was too afraid to speak. They floated like mist. They curled around him, whispering, "You didn't scream loud enough. You should have run faster. You should have been braver." Courage whimpered, trying to step through, but the hallway shifted. The walls pulsed. The floor rippled like gums under pressure. And then, the drill arrived, hovering in front of him. Bigger now, its wings humming like a choir of flies. It didn't chase this time. It waited, like it knew this was the moment. The mouths on the walls opened wider, all of them. Courage backed away. He turned, but the hall behind him vanished. Only forward now, only the drill. It spun, slowly, and then whispered again, that same horrible promise. "This won't hurt." Courage fell to his knees. He clutched his ears, but the sound wasn't loud. It was inside him now, the memory of every panic, every fear, every time he couldn't protect Muriel, every time he froze, every time he failed. The mouths opened wider, the hallway swirled like a whirlpool of regret, and just as the drill flew toward him, he screamed. Not a dream scream, not a silent scream, a real one, loud, raw, cracked, courageous. The walls shattered, the mouths vanished, the drill halted in midair, confused, and then, it dropped, dead. Courage floated upward through nothing. No walls, no drill, no screams, just soft white silence, like resting in the belly of a cloud. He drifted in a warm bubble, wrapped in a calm that felt earned, like the moment after a thunderstorm, when the world finally remembers how to breathe. The nightmare was ending. He felt it. The bubble lowered him gently, onto a smooth surface. He blinked. The floor beneath him was porcelain. Familiar. Too familiar. He stood in the bag farmhouse kitchen. Morning light spilled through the window, casting long gold shapes across the tiles. The house was quiet. Still, had it all been. Courage turned to see Eustace seated at the table, slurping tea, his face calm, his mouth closed. Muriel stood at the stove, humming gently. She turned to Courage, smiled sweetly, and said, "He slept through the whole thing, dear. You did just fine." Courage blinked. Dr. Smiley's briefcase. Gone. The drill. Even the tiny silver feather. Gone. Even the tiny silver feather. Gone. All that remained was a single item on the counter. A tooth. Yellowed. Crooked. Harmless. Resting in a little glass cup. Like a relic. Muriel reached over and gently patted Courage on the head. See, no need to worry. It's all over now. Outside, the wind sighed. The shadows retreated beneath the porch. The birds chirped, just once, as if to say, good job, little dog. Courage walked to his corner cushion, and curled up slowly. His body still felt fuzzy, but his heart beat softly, steady, and for the first time in days, he closed his eyes without fear. As he drifted off, the camera slowly panned toward Eustace, who grunted once, opened his mouth, and inside, nothing, just darkness. Then a tiny spark of silver, a new drill, quietly forming. But Courage was already dreaming, and this time, it was a nice one. The wind in nowhere was quiet that morning. Almost too quiet. It crept lazily across the plains, nudging the windows of the Bag farmhouse with soft taps, like a child asking to be let in. Inside, everything felt unusually still. Muriel stood in the living room, squinting at the golden strip of sunlight cutting across the rug. She lifted a hand and wiped it along the edge of the table. Dust. Not just a little, but layers. Fine floating, gray dust. Oh my, she muttered kindly. This place could use a proper cleaning. From the hallway, Courage peeked out nervously. He knew that tone. The cleaning tone. And sure enough, Muriel walked toward the hallway closet. She opened the door, and out came the vacuum. It wasn't their normal vacuum. It was old, too old. The kind with chrome sides and cloth tubes. It hummed faintly even when unplugged, like it was remembering something. Courage's ears twitched. He didn't like the way it looked at him. If vacuums had eyes, and maybe this one did, they were watching him now. Muriel patted the top of it gently. I found this at that yard sale last week. Lovely folks. Odd eyes. She plugged it in. The vacuum groaned awake, letting out a long shuddering breath. Wee-ee-ee-z-z-z-z. A cloud of old perfume and dust puffed from its vents. Courage gagged. Muriel smiled. Courage, dear. Be a sweetheart and help tidy up. The vacuum began to move. Not roll. Move. It tugged forward on its own, nozzle twitching left and right like a sniffing snout. Muriel laughed. Oh, how strong it is. But Courage didn't laugh. He stared at the thing as it rolled across the carpet, and made no sound as it sucked. The dust didn't disappear. It hid. Later that day, Courage tiptoed into the hallway. The vacuum sat still in the corner, silent, dormant. He inched closer. Its cord swayed slightly, though no wind blew. Courage reached a paw toward it, and the vacuum's nozzle whipped around and stared at him. That night the farmhouse slept. Muriel snored gently in her rocker. Eustace grumbled in his dreams, chasing imaginary ducks with a plunger. Only Courage was awake. He sat near the kitchen, eyes wide, paws tucked beneath him, watching, waiting. The vacuum still sat in the hallway, leaning slightly forward, as if listening to the rhythm of the house's sleep. Every once in a while, its hose twitched, like it was breathing. Courage crept closer, slowly, carefully. The vacuum didn't move, but its nozzle was pointed at him. He stared into it. It stared back. He took one more step, and it spoke, not with words, but with a faint inhale. Kuwaragi. The sound was not mechanical. It was soft, wet, like the whisper of something trapped deep inside its bag. Courage yelped and scrambled backward, knocking over a broom. The crash echoed far too loud in the quiet house. Muriel stirred but didn't wake. The vacuum turned slightly on its own wheels. Its cord curled like a tail, and it began to roll forward. Courage dashed to the basement door and slipped inside, panting. He peeked through the crack. The vacuum now sat in the middle of the hallway, still, but closer, much closer. He backed away into the shadows, and tripped over something soft. He looked down. An old photograph, dusty, faded. Muriel, younger, smiling, standing beside someone who wasn't Eustace, someone holding the same vacuum. The back read, Gwendolyn, 1958, gone too soon. Courage's eyes widened. The vacuum's hum returned, low, personal, possessive. It wasn't just a vacuum. It was holding on to something, or someone. Upstairs, the lights flickered once, then again, and from the hallway, Kuwaragi. Morning came, but it didn't feel like it. The sun peeked through the windows, but the light felt dull, like it had been washed too many times. Thin, pale, sleepy, Courage sat on the rug, eyes heavy from a night without dreams. He hadn't moved from the foot of the basement stairs. The vacuum had stopped humming sometime before dawn, but it had never truly gone still. Muriel walked into the kitchen, humming softly, her feet gentle on the floor. She was smiling, but something was different. Her eyes blinked slower, her hair moved oddly, like it was underwater, and when she poured the tea, it missed the cup, just spilled, slowly, silently. She didn't notice. "Good morning, dear," she said kindly to Courage, as always. But her voice had an echo, a faint static behind the words, like someone was repeating her from far away. Courage tilted his head. She didn't pet him, didn't even look down. She just drifted past him like a cloud with feet. In the hallway, the vacuum sat waiting, cord coiled neatly, bag full, nozzle pointed toward Muriel. She didn't flinch, didn't see it. She just stepped around it, as if it had always been there. The vacuum's nozzle twitched once, in delight. Courage shuddered. Later that day, he found her in the sitting room, staring at the window, not through it, just at it. She was humming the same 4 notes, over, and over, and over, and in her lap, the vacuum cord, loosely curled, like a cat. Courage gently reached up and tugged it away. Muriel blinked slowly. "Oh, Courage," she said with a dreamy smile. "I've never felt so light." He tilted his head. She floated an inch off the chair. He barked in panic, but the sound came out muffled, like through cotton. Muriel looked at him gently. "Don't worry, dear. The house is finally clean." Behind her, the vacuum crept forward, inch by inch, whirring, purring, possessing. The vacuum moved on its own now. It didn't hide anymore. It rolled across the house like it had lived there forever, like it belonged. And Courage knew. It was no longer just a machine. It was remembering, breathing, feeding. That night, Muriel didn't eat dinner. She sat at the table, humming to no one. Her feet hovered gently above the floor. Courage barked softly, offering her soup. She smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. She whispered, "I don't need food anymore, dear. The vacuum takes care of me." Behind her, the chrome machine purred, like a cat that had learned how to lie. Eustace didn't notice. He grunted from the couch, snoring loudly, glasses askew. But the television blinked, and blinked again, and for just a moment, on the screen, a still image. Muriel, inside the vacuum, floating, smiling, dust trailing from her sleeves. Courage turned to warn her, but she was gone. The chair was empty, just a trail of gray lint drifting toward the hallway. He ran. He found the vacuum standing at the end of the hall, cord wrapped around it like arms. Its nozzle pointed at him like a finger. It didn't move. It didn't need to. The house was moving for it now. The hallway bent inward, walls curving like ribs, carpet lifting like a tongue, and beneath the floorboards, he could hear it. "Courage, come inside. It's clean in here." The floor cracked beneath him. He fell, down, into the bag. The world went dark, silent. Then, light, fuzzy, white, spinning. Courage landed softly on a floor made of lint. Above him, zippers in the sky. Below, old socks and dust bunnies the size of cows. Everything smelled like dryer sheets and forgotten memories. He was inside the vacuum. Far in the distance he saw her. Muriel, floating gently above a cloud of gray fluff, smiling, still humming. He ran toward her, but the dust grabbed his ankles. Not tightly, lovingly, welcoming him, like a blanket that never let go. The vacuum's voice echoed all around. "Here, you never have to feel scared again." Inside the vacuum, everything felt safe, too safe. Courage moved slowly through the thick fluff of forgotten corners. The world was muffled, like being underwater in a warm bathtub. Each step sank into gray. Old hair ribbons floated like jellyfish. Tiny music boxes spun lullabies that didn't match. And in the middle of it all was Muriel, floating, eyes half closed, a smile soft as sleep. She rocked slowly in a recliner made of lint and thread. She was singing the same 4-note lullaby Courage had heard since she'd adopted him. But now, it echoed, and echoed again, and again. "Muriel." Courage barked softly, stepping forward. She opened her eyes, dream slow. Her pupils were swirling, cloudy like misted glass. "Oh, Courage," she said gently. "You made it. Isn't it peaceful here?" He whimpered, reaching for her, but soft tendrils of dust pulled at him. gently, firmly, not grabbing, hugging. Stay. The vacuum's voice whispered from the walls, soft, maternal. She's never been so happy. Why would you take that away? Courage struggled forward, paws sinking into carpeting made of memories. He looked around. Old toys, photos, all the things Muriel had loved, now sleeping, now fading. Muriel held out her hand. You were always afraid, dear. But here, there's no fear. She reached toward his paw. Courage took it, and for a moment, he believed her. He felt warm. He felt calm. He felt like sleeping forever. But then, he looked down, at her hand, and saw it turning to dust, drifting. She wasn't with the vacuum. She was being used, fed to it, bit by bit. Her smile didn't flicker, but her shadow was gone. Courage's ears flattened. His eyes widened. He pulled away. The dust reacted, suddenly aggressive, forming arms, reaching, grabbing. The vacuum's voice changed. You brought her here. You woke me. She stays. Courage barked, louder than ever. A bark that shook lint from the clouds. A bark that cracked the dust walls. A bark that reached Muriel. Her smile softened. Her head tilted. She blinked. Courage. He grabbed her arm. Everything shook. The sky of the vacuum blinked like a warning light. The floor opened beneath them, and they fell. Together, they fell through silence. No wind, no scream, just softness, like diving into a pillow too big to end. Courage held Muriel's hand as they tumbled downward, the world of lint and lullabies vanishing above them. Then, they landed, gently, in the living room. Sunlight filled the room in a way it hadn't in days. Bright, golden, clean. Muriel lay still for a moment, blinking at the ceiling. Then she sat up, rubbing her head. Oh my, she said softly. I must have dozed off. Courage panted, trembling, unsure if they were truly back. But Muriel turned to him and smiled. Warm, clear-eyed, real. She placed a gentle hand on his head. You saved me, didn't you, dear? He whimpered with relief and nuzzled into her lap. Outside, the wind picked up gently, lifting the curtains. It smelled like morning again. The vacuum, gone. Not broken, not banished, just gone. Only a patch of floor left perfectly spotless, as if nothing had ever sat there, except a single hairpin, the kind Muriel wore long ago. It sat quietly in the sunlight, no longer spinning. Eustace wandered in from the other room, holding a sandwich. What'd I miss? Muriel chuckled and stood. Absolutely nothing, dear. She made tea. Courage curled up by the fire. The house, finally, breathed again. Clean. Not by force, not by fear, but by letting go. Later that night, Courage lay by the door. The stars blinked above nowhere like sleepy eyes. He thought, for a moment, he heard the faint hum of a vacuum, far off in the distance, but it was just the wind. This time, it was a morning like molasses in nowhere. Thick, slow, and golden. The wind was too tired to move, and the farmhouse creaked as if it too had just woken from a long, dusty nap. Muriel stepped onto the porch, a mug of tea in her hand, humming a sleepy tune that only Courage knew by heart. She paused. There, on the wooden step, sat an egg. Not small, not smooth. It was round, grayish-white, with little swirls like sleepy storm clouds trapped in the shell. She bent down and picked it up gently. Oh my, she said with a smile. Someone's forgotten you. She brought it inside, cradled in a dish towel. Courage tilted his head. An egg? Out here? Alone? He sniffed it cautiously. It was warm, too warm, and it trembled, just once, in her hands. Muriel placed it on a cushion near the window, under a table lamp. There, now, you'll be safe here. She kissed the top of the shell. Eustace walked by, grumbling, stupid breakfast rock. Muriel just chuckled, but Courage stayed close. Something about the egg felt alive, more than it should, and when no one was watching, it blinked. Just a single, slow blink across the shell. That night, as the stars blinked above the sleeping farmhouse, Courage lay beside the egg. It pulsed faintly, like it had a tiny heartbeat inside. And then, crack. A single line ran down the shell. Courage's eyes widened. The egg rocked once, then twice. Then, silence. Morning tiptoed into nowhere. Soft light slipped across the windows, and Courage opened one eye with a yawn that barely made a sound. The house was quiet, too quiet. He turned toward the egg, and saw it. Split, shell in two soft halves. Still warm, still glowing faintly from the table lamp above, and nestled between the broken shell, wrapped in bits of down and dreams, was a gooseling. Tiny, fluffy, cream-colored with pale gray feathers and sleepy eyelids. It blinked once, then looked up at Courage, and then, it honked. Not loud, just a small squeaky sound like a hiccup wrapped in a whisper. Courage gasped, backing up slightly, but the gooseling waddled toward him. Right away, no hesitation, it climbed up onto his paw, curled beside his fur, and sighed, like it had always known him, like it had been waiting for him. Muriel peeked in from the kitchen. "Oh, would you look at that," she whispered, smiling. "Imprinted on you, dear." Courage blinked. "Imp, printed." Muriel chuckled. "Means he thinks you're his mum now." Courage froze. The gooseling stretched its neck and gently pecked Courage's nose, then fell asleep with a squeaky snore. For the rest of the day, it didn't leave his side. Not once. When Courage walked, waddle waddle waddle. When Courage ate, peck peck peck. When Courage went to nap, the gooseling flopped right onto his head. That evening, Courage sat on the porch, eyes wide with confusion. The gooseling was asleep on his back, little feet twitching like it was chasing breadcrumbs in its dreams. Courage sighed. Muriel brought out a warm blanket and draped it over them both. "He needs you, Courage," she said softly, "until he's ready." Courage blinked slowly, and nodded. Outside, the wind hummed a lullaby, and from the stars above, a gentle goose-shaped cloud drifted across the sky. The sun rose slow and syrupy over nowhere. Courage tried to start the day the usual way. A cautious stretch, a little breakfast, and maybe a quiet look out the window to make sure the sky hadn't fallen. But this morning wasn't usual, because wherever he went, he was not alone. The gooseling was glued to him, not literally, but emotionally, spiritually, existentially, absolutely. When Courage tiptoed to the kitchen, the gooseling waddled under his belly. When he sat to drink water, the gooseling climbed in the bowl. When he tried to nap on the rug, the gooseling slipped under his ear, curled up like a comma, and squeaked itself to sleep. Courage blinked at Muriel. She was delighted. "Just look at how much he loves you," she beamed. Eustace just mumbled, "Stupid fluffy barn goblin." But Courage was too exhausted to argue. He tried sneaking off, once. For 10 seconds, the gooseling's honk echoed like a siren. Hoonk! It wasn't loud, but it was heartbreaking. It shook the windows, and Courage ran back, paws trembling, to find the little one spinning in circles, chirping and peeping with desperate eyes. He scooped it up, and the honk stopped. It sighed and flopped back onto his nose. Later that day, Courage tried hiding under the couch. The gooseling found him. He tried disguising himself as a lamp. The gooseling pecked the lampshade right off. He tried climbing on the roof. The gooseling jumped from the windowsill like a tiny puffball missile, and landed squarely on his head. That night, Courage lay in bed, eyes wide. The gooseling snored on his chest, rising and falling with each breath. Courage looked to the ceiling and let out the tiniest, tiredest sigh. He was overwhelmed, but deep in his chest, he felt something else too. Warm, soft, safe. A tiny beak pressed against his fur. A heartbeat no bigger than a gumdrop matched his own. Outside, the wind carried a lullaby across the grass. The stars above blinked like quiet little goose eyes. And in the stillness of the house, the gooseling whispered a final sleepy hoonk. The wind outside was different today. Not scary, not stormy, but excited. It whooshed around the house in playful circles, lifting blades of grass, tugging on curtains, and rattling wind chimes like they were giggling. Inside, the gooseling was growing. Not much, just enough. A little taller, a little louder, a little faster. And Courage hadn't had a minute of peace. This morning started with a honk, then another, then 10 more. The gooseling had discovered, running. Tiny feet, rapid fire, honk 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 honk. It zoomed from room to room, feathers fluttering, knocking over chairs, rugs, curtains, even Eustace's sandwich, which started an entirely separate war. Courage tried to keep up, but the gooseling was a blur of fluff. At one point, it somehow got inside the teapot, then the pantry, then the mailbox. Every time Courage caught it, it honked, snuggled him for 2 seconds, and escaped again. Muriel laughed so hard she had to sit down. "Oh, Courage, he's just got the zoomies." Zoomies. This was a feather storm. By mid-afternoon, the house looked like a pillow factory had exploded. Feathers in the flower bin, feathers in the bathtub, feathers in Eustace's mouth. Don't ask. Feathers even inside Courage's dreams. Somehow, the gooseling flew, barely, from shelf to counter to Courage's back, like it was trying to take flight with willpower alone. And then, it did, just for a moment. A hop, a flap, a little float, and it landed on Muriel's head with the most proud, squeaky honk in history. She clapped. "Oh my, you saw that, didn't you?" "Courage." He nodded slowly, blinking through feathers. His tail wagged once, maybe twice. Then he passed out in a pile of cushions. The gooseling curled beside him, panting happily. It fluffed its wings, puffed up its chest, and let out a triumphant sleepy "hoonk," then promptly fell asleep face first in a sock. Outside, a single white feather floated up into the sky, and vanished. Night returned to nowhere, like a hush. The stars above blinked slowly, and the wind curled around the farmhouse like a quilt. Inside, all was quiet. Even the gooseling had fallen still. Courage lay curled up at the foot of Muriel's rocking chair. The gooseling was tucked beside him. One wing flopped over its beak, rising and falling with every tiny breath. Muriel rocked gently, her eyes half closed, humming a lullaby from nowhere in particular. Everything felt soft, peaceful, safe, until the gooseling twitched, once, then again. Its legs kicked, its wings fluttered, and then it honked in its sleep. But not the usual honk. This one was hollow, long, echoing. The room dimmed, the floor beneath Courage shimmered, and suddenly, he was alone. No gooseling, no Muriel, no farmhouse, just sky. Endless foggy sky, and above him, a giant white feather, slowly spiraling downward. Courage stepped forward, and found himself walking on clouds. The dream world of the gooseling, a place of pawns floating in midair, of tiny staircases made of cattails, of distant honks that sounded like lullabies sung underwater. Courage wandered the dream, calling softly, "Hello?" Feathers brushed his face gently, but there was no reply, until he heard it. A single sleepy honk from behind a weeping cloud. He peeked through, and saw the gooseling, floating in midair, eyes closed, surrounded by a swirl of feathers shaped like memories. A nest of dream stuff. But it wasn't happy. It honked again, confused. It flapped, but it didn't fly. It looked around, lost. Courage stepped closer, but every step took him farther away. He barked, but no sound came. He tried to leap toward it, but fell through the clouds, down, and landed, gasping, back in the real world. The house was dark. The gooseling still lay beside him, but its feathers were cold. Courage whimpered, nuzzling it gently. No response. He nudged harder. A tiny twitch, a softer breath, then a whisper, "Honk." The gooseling opened one eye, sleepy, confused, then smiled. Courage sighed with relief, curling back around it like a shield. Outside, the wind brushed across the window like a mother's hand. The stars blinked once more, and somewhere in the distance, a soft, dreaming honk floated into the night. The morning came slowly, creeping across the fields of nowhere, like a whisper too shy to wake the world. Inside the farmhouse, Courage opened his eyes first. The gooseling was still curled beside him, but it looked bigger, just a little. Its feathers fluffed with the light. Its tiny chest rose and fell with sleepy calm. And Courage felt something stir deep in his heart. A quiet thump of something he didn't want to name. Muriel stepped in, her arms full of fresh laundry, humming her usual tune. She paused when she saw them, and smiled, sweet and sad. "Oh, Courage," she said softly, "he's almost ready." Courage's ears drooped. Ready? That afternoon, the wind changed. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't cold. Just different. Like it was carrying a message, or making room. The gooseling ran in circles through the yard, flapping his wings, letting out happy, breathy honks. He stumbled, lifted, drifted. For a moment, he floated, only inches above the ground. But longer this time, longer than yesterday. Muriel clapped. Eustace mumbled something through his newspaper. Courage just watched. A knot behind his ribs. A knot he didn't know how to untie. That evening, Muriel packed a little basket, bits of bread, a warm scarf, a tiny handkerchief. She tucked it near the porch, not for them, but for the sky. The gooseling stood at the edge of the steps, wings twitching, eyes wide. Courage walked beside him. The gooseling looked up. Their eyes met. There was no honk, just a knowing. Just that soft, fragile thread between them, stretched out one last time. Courage gave a nod, a tiny one, and the gooseling flapped, once, twice, and flew. It was clumsy, unsteady, but real. He lifted into the sky, high above the fields, a little feathered shape against the fading sun. Courage stood still, paws curled, chest full of everything he couldn't say. Muriel placed a hand on his head. "He'll remember, dear," she whispered. Courage blinked slowly, and smiled, just a little. That night, he lay in his bed. The house felt bigger, but not emptier, just quieter. Outside, a single white feather floated past the window, and landed softly on the porch. The attic had been quiet for years. Too quiet. Dust rested in lazy layers across boxes and trunks, and the light bulb above flickered like it was afraid to wake the dark. But today, it buzzed. Softly, hesitantly. And then, it flickered once more, and clicked on. Down below, Courage followed Muriel's soft humming as she swept the kitchen floor. It was a calm morning. The wind wasn't howling. The moon wasn't glowing in the daytime. Even the toaster wasn't behaving suspiciously. But something was off. He could feel it, like a tickle in his spine. A static in the wallpaper. A presence. He glanced toward the attic stairs, and the light was on. Later that day, Eustace went up looking for an old wrench. He grumbled through trunks and muttered at the floorboards. Then something caught his eye. An old box. Unlabeled. Bound in worn leather straps. Inside, a mask. The mask. The one he used to scare Courage with. Only different. Its mouth was wider. The eyes were glassy, and it buzzed softly, like it was breathing through a radio. Eustace chuckled. "Hey, stupid dog." He slipped it over his face. And the attic pulsed. Downstairs, Courage dropped his bowl. He looked up toward the ceiling. The light bulb flickered again. Once, twice, then screamed. Not loudly, but with a voice Courage hadn't heard in years. "Oh gia booga booga." Eustace's laughter echoed down the stairs. But then, it looped. The scream happened again. Oh gia booga, then again. Oh gia booga, and again. Faster, louder, glitching, like a record skipping. Muriel called up. "Eustace dear, what on earth are you doing up there?" No answer. Just screams. Endless. Echoing. The attic door stood open now. Wide. Inviting. Or maybe warning. The air in the house had changed. No breeze. No warmth. Just tension. Like the walls were listening. Courage stood at the base of the stairs. Fur puffed. Tail curled. From above the scream repeated. Oh gia booga. Booga. Oh gia booga. Oh gia booga. Booga. Then it stopped. Dead. Silence. The kind of silence that waits. Courage climbed the steps, each creak echoing too far. At the top, Eustace stood with his back to him. Still. Mask on. Shoulders twitching. "Eustace," Courage whispered. Eustace turned. And the mask glitched. Not just flickering, but rewinding. His face distorted like an old VHS tape on rewind. His arms twitched. His head tilted. And kept tilting. The mask's mouth opened wider than it should. And the scream returned. Oh gia booga. Booga. But now layered. Stacked. Dozens of voices overlapping. Courage screamed in return. But no sound came out. Only static. He ran. Down the stairs. Past Muriel. Into the hallway. But the house was changing. The walls rippled like fabric. Mirrors repeated his reflection infinitely. Every object whispered the scream. The toaster. The lamp. Even the rug. Ooga. 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 It wasn't a house anymore. It was a loop. Courage dove under the bed. The shadows welcomed him. He peeked out. Eustace was in the hallway now. Still. Mask on. But now, there were two of him. Then three. Each one with the same mask. Each one screaming. Out of sync. Like broken records stacked on top of one another. Courage curled into a ball. He covered his ears. He wished it away. And then, he opened his eyes. And saw Muriel, standing at the edge of the bed, looking right at him. Her voice soft, echoing slightly. "Don't let the noise in, dear." She reached out, but her hand glitched, twitched, jittered, like she was made of television fuzz. Courage opened his eyes, but the house was gone. The hallway, gone. Muriel, gone. All that remained was sound, a faint repeating hum, like a record caught on the edge of silence. Ooh bio, ooh booga. He stood in a space that felt like a hallway, but looked like static. White noise shaped like walls, carpet that fuzzed beneath his paws. He ran, but the world skipped. Forward 3 steps, back 5, sideways into a wall that didn't exist. And then, flash, he was in the kitchen. Normal. Eustace sat at the table, maskless. Muriel cooked something in a pan that sizzled like a sleepy radio. Courage blinked. Was it over? Then the toaster spoke. Oh gia booga. Courage yelped. Eustace looked up, smiled, too wide. His face flickered. The mask was back. Courage stumbled into the living room. The rug warped under his feet. The couch blinked. The TV played footage of himself screaming in slow motion. The voice returned. Not loud, not angry, but wrong. Ooga. Courage, ooga. Courage, ooga. He turned. The mask floated in the air, spinning, whirring. Courage backed up, but the walls bent around him like rubber. He barked, but his mouth glitched open and shut like a flickering GIF. He ran for the mirror, and saw himself, not normal, but, wearing the mask. He reached up, clawed at it, pulled, and pulled, but the mask wouldn't come off. He could feel it digging in. The mouth opened wider. Inside, nothing. A loop, a scream with no end. And then, a voice, familiar. Courage, soft, real. Muriel. She stood outside the glitching wall, holding a pot of tea that glowed like a lighthouse. I made chamomile, dear. She smiled. Not a mask, not a loop, just Muriel. And her voice cut through everything. The scream warped, slowed, cracked. Courage ripped the mask from his face. It shattered. Light spilled in. He gasped awake beneath the bed. Back in the house. The hallway was quiet. The mask, gone. Or hiding. Or waiting. But Courage, he was still here. Still shaking. Still breathing. The farmhouse felt, paused, like someone had hit the stop button on a remote you couldn't see. The wind outside had stilled. The clouds above hung in place like brushstrokes on glass. And inside the house, Muriel didn't move. Not blink, not sway, not breathe. She sat at the kitchen table, hands folded politely, eyes forward, as if waiting for something, or remembering she was supposed to be. Courage approached slowly. Her eyes didn't follow him. Her tea sat untouched. Steam hung above it, frozen mid-rise, like a sculpture in the air. Courage whimpered, tugged gently on her sleeve. Nothing. He looked closer. Her skin flickered, just once, like a buffering video frame. He stepped back, and that's when he saw it. The glitch, running along the floorboards, a pulsing ripple, stretching from the hallway into the kitchen like an invisible cord, leading to the mask. It was back, resting neatly on the fireplace mantel, still, watching, smiling. Its reflection jittered in the glass of the window. Only in the reflection did it move. Courage turned toward Muriel. Her eyes, still locked forward, only now they were flickering. A single frame, repeating. A blink, that never finished. He circled behind her. On the wall a photograph. Muriel and Eustace in the garden, smiling. Courage looked closer. The photo shimmered. And then, it changed. Muriel's face twisted, mask-like. The garden behind her bled static. Eustace blurred into noise. The mask was rewriting her, one frame at a time. Courage panicked. He grabbed the photo, pulled it down. The house glitched. Lights stuttered. The floor let out a long, low groan. Muriel's hand twitched. She whispered, "Booga." Courage gasped. She was in the loop now. He raced to the mantel, snatched the mask. It buzzed in his paws, vibrating with whispers. He hurled it into the fireplace, but it froze midair, hovered, turned, and flew straight toward him. Courage ducked. It slammed into the wall. The glitch line cracked like glass. Time resumed. Muriel blinked, looked around. Oh, tea's cold. She stood, humming, and walked to the kettle. Courage just stood there, frozen himself, because as she passed the mirror, for just a moment, her reflection wore the mask. That night, Courage couldn't sleep. The house creaked and settled like a creature rolling over in bed. The wind scratched gently at the windows, and somewhere beneath it all, he could still hear it. Ooga, booga, faint, looping, sometimes high, sometimes low, sometimes reversed, as if someone was trying to unscare him and failing. He followed the sound through the dark hallway, each step repeated behind him. Even when he stopped, the house was mimicking, echoing. He turned the corner, and stepped into a room that shouldn't exist. It looked like the living room, but too long, stretched, and on every wall, screens, dozens, each one playing the same thing. Eustace, screaming, over, and over, and over, but not quite the same every time. One was slower, one was sped up, one had Courage's voice dubbed over it, one had Muriel's, all glitched, all endless. Courage stood in the center of it all, trembling. The mask floated above the room, spinning slowly. The screen started sinking. Oga, 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 Oga. Courage clutched his ears. The floor dissolved beneath him. He fell. He landed in his own memory. But it wasn't right. It glitched at the edges. Muriel stirred her soup in reverse. Eustace floated across the couch instead of sitting. And the mask hung in the air like a sun. It pulsed once. The scream hit him like thunder. His eyes rolled back. The world rewound. He woke up again. Same spot, same room, same walls. It had looped, again. He looked at the screens, his own face now, screaming. He barked, tried to run, everything repeated. Even his heartbeat was syncing with the audio. The loop wanted him trapped. Then, he remembered something. Muriel's voice, soft, real. Don't let the noise in, dear. He closed his eyes, breathed, slower, slower. Everything screamed around him. But he stayed still. The mask flickered, and began to dim. One by one, the screens shut off. Pop, 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 silence. Courage opened his eyes. Back in the hallway, no screens, no sound. Only the faintest broken recording playing somewhere in the distance. Oga, doga. He exhaled. The loop was fading, but it wasn't gone. Not yet. The morning in nowhere came slow, like it didn't want to wake anyone too soon. The sun blinked over the horizon. The wind whispered a gentle tune. And even the barn seemed to exhale. Inside the farmhouse, all was still, except for Courage. He stood in the living room, eyes fixed on the mantel. The mask was back. It sat perfectly centered, silent. But Courage knew silence didn't mean safe. He stepped closer. It didn't flicker, didn't glow, didn't breathe. But he could feel it waiting. Waiting to scream again. To loop, to twist, to bend Muriel's voice, and stretch time until everything was echo and nothing was real. Not again. Courage took a deep breath, and he did something he'd never done before. He picked up the mask, and didn't run. Instead, he carried it to the kitchen table, sat down, placed it gently in front of him, and said, "I'm not scared of you." The mask didn't move, the walls didn't shift, but something shifted inside. Courage closed his eyes, breathed. The memories came, all the screams, all the loops, all the fear. He let them pass, didn't fight them, didn't trap them. He just let them go. And as he did, the mask cracked. Once, a fine line across the mouth, then another, across the eye. The house groaned softly, not in pain, in relief. Muriel entered quietly, a cup of tea in her hand. "Oh, there you are, dear," she said. Courage turned. She was normal. No flickers, no masks, just Muriel, smiling, real. He turned back to the table. The mask had crumbled. All that remained was a fine gray dust. Muriel looked down and raised an eyebrow. "Oh my, has Eustace been carving potatoes again?" Courage smiled. Small, tired, whole. He nuzzled into her apron. She chuckled and stroked his head. There, it's all clean now." That evening, the farmhouse sat quietly under the stars. Courage curled up in his bed. The wind outside was soft. The world, gentle. And somewhere in the walls, where loops had lived, was nothing but quiet. Not silence, but peace. It was one of those quiet afternoons in nowhere. The sky hung still, pale and undecided. The fields didn't sway. Even the wind seemed to be holding its breath. Inside the farmhouse, Eustace sat in his usual dented armchair, thumb hammering the remote. Click, click, click. Nothing but static. "Dang thing's broken again," he barked, slapping the side of the TV. The screen wobbled with static snow, dancing and flickering like tiny ghosts trying to tell secrets. Muriel poked her head in. "Try channel 43, dear. It was working earlier." Click, static, click, static, click. Fev ZZZZT. The screen stopped flickering. A new channel. No number, just darkness. And then, an eye. Pale, blinking, watching. Eustace blinked back. What in tarnation? Then the TV cut off completely. Screen black, room silent. That night, the house felt different. The corners were heavier, the shadows longer, and the TV, it turned on by itself. Just static. Soft at first, then louder. Courage crept toward it. Each step slowed by a hum in the air. Like something vibrating behind the walls. The screen flickered. Shapes in the noise. Eyes, faces, himself. But wrong. The static thickened almost liquid. And then, a whisper, right behind him. "Courage." He spun around. Nothing. Back at the screen. A face now. No features. Just a mouth. Whispering silently through snow. The remote clicked itself. Once. Twice. Channel 0. The next morning was unusually still. The kind of still that feels like it's watching you back. Muriel moved slowly through the kitchen. Her eyes didn't sparkle the same way. Her hum, once sweet and soft, now buzzed, just faintly, like it came through a speaker left on too long. She stared at the TV while the kettle boiled. It wasn't on, but she watched it anyway. Courage brought her a blanket. She didn't look down. "Thank you, dear," she said. but her voice echoed slightly, like she was speaking in a hallway, far away. He tilted his head. Muriel blinked at the blank screen, and for a split second, the static returned, just a flicker, an eye, gone again. All day, the screen stayed off, but the house felt wired, charged. The lights dimmed when Courage passed through the hallway. The shadows moved in frames. Eustace didn't notice a thing. He grumbled about the weather, kicked his slippers, and fell asleep with a cold sandwich on his chest. That evening, Courage heard it again. The whisper, faint, slipping between walls, buzzing beneath the floorboards. He followed it, cautiously, all the way to the living room, and found Muriel standing inches from the TV, not watching, listening. Her eyes were blank, her hands at her sides. She swayed, just slightly, like she was sinking to something Courage couldn't hear. Muriel, she didn't turn. Her lips moved, barely, mouthing something silently. He crept closer. The screen powered on with a pop, white static. But in the middle of the screen, a shape forming, blurry, tall, wrong. Courage reached for the remote, but it hissed in his paw and burned away, like paper. Muriel blinked slowly, whispered, "I think it sees me now," and the screen smiled. The static hummed through the house. It didn't shake the walls. It didn't rattle the windows. It waited, buzzing, soft, steady, certain. Muriel sat in her chair, her eyes never blinking, her body gently pulsing in time with the screen's glow. The TV wasn't just on anymore. It was alive. Courage paced, trembled, watched her, tried unplugging it. The cord came out, but the screen stayed on. It laughed, just once, softly, like a breath caught in wires. That night, Courage dreamed of snow. Not real snow, but TV snow. He ran across fields of static. The moon flickered like a bad bulb. The sky glitched with colors that didn't exist. And ahead, a doorway. Not wood, not glass, just screen. He stepped through. Inside, a living room, but not theirs. It looked the same, but wrong. Too clean, too quiet, too bright. And Muriel sat there, staring at a TV that stared back. He called to her. She turned, but her face flickered. Her eyes repeated the same blink, frame by frame. She said nothing. The room skipped, like a scratched DVD. Again, he called. She turned, flickered, turned, flickered. And from the television behind her, the demon emerged. It didn't walk. It slid, built from static, outlined in hum. No eyes, no mouth, just a single glowing shape, like a face still loading. It reached toward Courage, but not with hands, with signal. A ripple of gray and white that surged forward like wind made of code. It touched him, and he screamed. But the sound froze mid-air, hanging like a frozen sound wave. The demon leaned close, whispered from everywhere at once. "We're watching." Then, click. Courage woke up, but not in bed. He was in the TV, looking out, at himself, at Muriel, at a world that now glitched with every breath. Courage stood on the inside now, inside the signal, inside the screen, inside something that wasn't meant to be lived in. He turned in slow motion, like wading through invisible syrup. The world around him was made of old cartoons, broken commercials, and colors that blinked like sleepy eyes. There were couches that moved slightly when you looked away. There were windows that only showed static, and behind every door, another room just like the last. He wandered, calling for Muriel, calling for Eustace, calling for anything real, but only his own voice echoed back, distorted by wires, filtered through speakers, bouncing forever between channels. In one room, he saw a version of himself, smiling too wide, moving on loop. It turned, spoke his name in reverse, Igaru. Then the screen changed, again. Another room, same room. Courage sat. He was tired. He closed his eyes, and dreamed inside the static. In the dream, Muriel walked beside him through a hallway made of antenna. She was humming, only now her voice flickered, rising and falling in pitch like a dial being spun by invisible hands. She said, "You've been watching too long, dear." She held out a teacup. Inside was snow. He took it, drank, and forgot. His name, his house, his paws, his voice. He woke, still in the screen. The TV static demon stood behind him now, but it didn't attack. It just stood, watching him, waiting. Courage whispered, "How do I leave?" The demon responded without sound. It glitched the answer into the wall. "You don't." The room cycled again, faster now. The couch melted into the carpet. The walls buzzed louder. He stumbled. He cried out, and for just a second, he heard her, Muriel, calling his name, not from inside, from the real house. He turned, a frame, a flicker, a tiny square of light, the real world. But it was small, shrinking. If he didn't act now, it would vanish. He ran, leapt. The demon lunged. The world warped. He screamed, and everything cut to black. Darkness, thick and quiet, not empty, just paused. Courage opened his eyes. He was somewhere between, not inside the screen, not fully out. A hallway of flickers, frames floating like leaves, each one pulsing with soundless memories. He stepped carefully, each paw pressing on moments long gone. Eustace muttering on the porch, Muriel pouring tea, himself, younger, smaller, safer. Every step made the past shimmer. And there, in the middle of the hallway, hovered a remote, old, dusty, heavy with memory. Its buttons weren't numbers, they were feelings, regret, hope, fear, try again, and one big red one, rewind. Courage looked up, ahead. The static demon returned, not angry, not chasing, just watching. Its shape rippled, fuzzy and flickering, like it had always been here, like it was here, forever. It raised a hand of static, reached. Courage gripped the remote, closed his eyes, pressed rewind. The hallway snapped, sound bent backward, the world hiccuped, and suddenly, he was flying through his own timeline, backward. He saw himself running from the screen, then standing in front of it, then hiding behind Muriel, then sniffing the power cord, then lying peacefully on the couch. Hours before the TV turned itself on, the house was whole again. The lights were steady, the screen was off. Muriel was humming in the kitchen. Eustace, asleep in his chair, snoring. The remote trembled in Courage's paw, growing heavier. He could stay here, before it all started. Never touch the screen, never hear the whisper, never let the static in. But, he'd forget what he'd seen, forget that inside the television, something still waited, something hungry, something not finished. He opened his eyes, stared at the glowing pause button, then, let go of the remote. It vanished, and time resumed. But he had changed. Now he knew, and knowledge was protection. He walked slowly toward the unplugged TV, sat in front of it, stared, and whispered, "Not tonight." The TV flickered once, then stayed dark. For now, the farmhouse was still, not strange, not scary, just still, like a snow globe set gently on a shelf, like the world had finally remembered how to sleep. Courage sat in the living room, eyes half-lidded, ears twitching softly with every creak of the floor. Muriel snoozed in her rocking chair, a folded quilt over her knees. The TV sat dark, cold, silent, unplugged, not watching anymore. But Courage didn't trust silence. Not yet. He padded across the room, and placed a thick blanket over the TV, just in case. Then another, and another, until it was hidden under layers of quilts and wool and old curtains. The demon couldn't reach through fabric, couldn't flicker where warmth lived. That's what Muriel always said. Nothing scary can touch you when you're tucked in nice and warm. Outside, the wind shifted gently. No howling, no moaning, just a sleepy breeze tracing its way through. Nowhere's empty fields. Stars blinked softly above. And in the barn, a rooster almost crowed, then yawned instead. Courage curled beside Muriel's chair. He sighed through his nose, tail tucked, eyes closing. And in the corner of the room, the TV pulsed once under the blankets, a faint static heartbeat. But it didn't grow, it didn't flicker, just one soft breath of memory, and then gone. Muriel stirred in her sleep, smiled, murmured, "Good dog." The night deepened, the room darkened, and the quiet stayed. No screams, no glitches, no demons, just rest. For Courage, for Muriel, for nowhere. The storm is over. The flicker has passed. The screen is dark, and Courage is safe. The house in nowhere stands still beneath the night sky. A moon hangs above, low and silver, soft as a lullaby. The fields stretch wide, like blankets across the earth. The wind no longer howls. It hums now, low, steady, kind. Inside, the farmhouse glows faintly from a single lamp. A lamp that flickers just enough to say, someone is home, someone is safe. Muriel is curled on her armchair, blanket over her lap, hands resting, breathing slow and even, dreaming of nothing in particular. Perhaps soup, perhaps the stars, perhaps the feeling of Courage's fur beneath her hand. Courage is nestled at her feet, his tail curled gently, his ears twitching every so often, not from fear, but from dreams, gentle ones. In his sleep, Courage twitches once. A paw lifts as though chasing something in the dream world. Not a monster, not a scream, but something light, like a butterfly made of clouds. He sighs, rolls over, and smiles. Time slows in nowhere. Clocks tick softer, walls don't creak as loud. Even the pipes seem to breathe in sync with the little dog sleeping below. The house, it seems, is grateful, thankful to be quiet again, thankful to be normal. Whatever normal means in nowhere. Down the hallway, Eustace snores like a broken tractor, but even that is a comfort now. It's a sound, Courage knows, predictable, familiar, and in this night, familiar is a lullaby. The TV in the living room is still under layers of cloth. Courage made sure of it. No more eyes watching. No more whispers crawling out of wires. Only stillness. Only warmth. Only sleep. Outside, the stars shift. The sky breathes. The earth turns its face gently toward dawn. But not yet. Still time to rest. Still time to dream. Courage's breath slows. His paws settle. No more twitching. Only sleep. Only dreams. Of Muriel's voice. Of fresh-baked treats. Of the way her apron smells when she hugs him tight. And for the first time in what feels like forever. No static. No masks. No fear. Only the hush of a world that's paused. Not because it's broken, but because it's peaceful. So let the house rest. Let the wind sing its lullaby. Let the dog sleep. Let the world be kind. For just a little while longer, because tonight in the middle of nowhere, Courage is safe, and the screen is quiet. Forevermore. Good night.